Today we're covering every retention attraction story that I come across. This is things that I have experienced and also what I noticed and learned. I'm going to be sharing quite a bit in this video. Of course, I'm going to be shortening a lot of these stories. If you guys want to watch the full version of these stories, they will be on my channel. You guys can go ahead and check that out. All right, so first thing is back in 2020, that's when I first started learning about retention, and I didn't have no knowledge of it. I just stumbled across it and I was like, hey, retention and NF attraction, you can start attracting women. I was like, okay, well, let's see if this is actually something worthwhile, because that was when I was pretty much dating and I was interested in meeting women, and I started learning about these videos. So you'll come across like the eye contact attraction, which I think this is part truth and part placebo, just because like essentially they talk about, oh, you're going to start making eye contact, you're going to start noticing women checking you out and noticing you. And then there's the attraction part where women will just approach you. So my experience with the eye contact attraction, I think it's part placebo just because you're being aware of it, but then you also have the benefits of retention, like being confident, being driven, feeling energetic, your testosterone going up. There are benefits that are actually related to retention. And essentially when you become confident, you're able to hold that eye contact. You don't become shy or timid. So this is something that you guys will notice and you'll probably experience. But in my case, I started noticing women making that eye contact, and then I started practicing, like, okay, I tried making it a goal to get onto these longer streaks to see if the attraction of women just approaching you actually happens. And before you know it, I think it was like, all these typically happen after 30 days. In my experience, it may be different for you guys, but essentially the first story that pretty much happened, you guys will find this out if you do watch some of my videos. Essentially, I was working out at the gym. I was working out chest that day, and I was doing incline chest. It was the chest press machine where you slap on the plates. And I was like, okay, well, I'm done with this one. And I was looking at the benches straight across from me, and I was like, okay, all the benches are free. I'm able to just go over there and start hitting chest. So I went over there and I started working out on the bench. And then there was this chick, and this is something that you guys will notice when you just go work out. You're very observant to what machines are free. You pay attention to, because like if it's a really busy day, you're like, okay, well, I can't go do that. I can't go do this or whatever. So I paid attention to all the benches were free, and I knew that. So I was like, okay, I started working out. I was on the far left bench, and there was like two or three other benches to the right side of me. And I think it was the 1, 2, so the second one to the right of me. Essentially this girl, she just approached me and she was like, hey, is anybody using that bench? And like I said, it's pretty obvious. You pay attention to what's free and what's available, and I didn't think anything of it. But essentially she just asked, is anybody using that bench, when you can obviously tell nobody was using it. I was like, no, nobody's using it. And I was just in the zone. Normally when I start working out, I just focus on working out, and I don't really talk to anybody. It's just the way how I normally am. I have music going on, so I don't really pay attention. I just give short responses, or I just give like, yeah, you're good, or whatever. But essentially that was that attraction story, which, thinking about it later, I was like, oh, okay. She probably knew that nobody was using those benches, but she wanted to spark up a conversation. Then again, there's a possibility that, hey, she didn't know if anybody was actually using it. So I'm trying to come from a logical perspective. The next attraction story that happened was, I think it was around the same year, 2020. Essentially, I had to go to the pharmacy to... I'm trying to think, because of YouTube purposes, I know there's a lot of censorship on this one subject, but essentially I had to get something that was mandated. But essentially I was waiting in line, and then there was this woman. She just approached me, started talking to me. She was like, hey, she started commenting on the way how I dress. She was like, oh, you have like that Miami look or something like that. I forgot what kind of fashion, but she mentioned that it was like a fashion statement. And then she just started talking to me while we're waiting in line. So there was that attraction story. The next one that happened was, I think, was the one where I was at the supermarket, I was waiting in line to essentially get some sliced meat so I can get some beef jerky, and before you know it, there's this older lady. She just started a conversation out of the blue, which I'm trying to come from a logical perspective. A lot of the older generation, you know, are very talkative. It's not like today's generation where they're just isolated. They don't really talk to each other. They don't socialize. So there's the possibility of that. But essentially what I noticed is I normally get approached, or women just start talking to me after 30 days of retention or NF, which I find very strange. Of course, there's been several instances where it's happened around 10 days, but essentially that one at the supermarket, she just started talking to me and all that, and I think she was married, but I'm not too for sure. I could be wrong. Some of these stories are getting a little bit hazy just because I don't really talk about them too much. But essentially, there was that one at the supermarket. The next one that I'm going to talk about is when I actually approached and I ended up asking a woman out for a date or something like that to get lunch. And essentially this was around like 45 days or something like that. And I got extreme confidence. So this was something that was really interesting just because I have never experienced extreme confidence, where I felt like, hey, if you don't take this opportunity, it may never happen. And before you know it, a very beautiful person, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna shoot my shot and let's see what happens. And before you know it, I have a boyfriend excuse, which is totally acceptable. It was, you know, like, it wasn't the right place or the right time. And of course, I probably wasn't her type, or she actually did have a boyfriend. But the main takeaway on that one is the extreme confidence. That's something that I have never experienced. It's something that's really interesting. So I think that story is a little bit interesting just on the way how it essentially happened. The other one I want to mention, this one is a little bit around, I think, like the 10-day mark. So attraction can happen at any time. One thing I do want you guys to be aware of is the more attractive, the more good looking you are, the more women you're going to just attract naturally. But when you practice retention and NF, essentially gives you that little extra boost. You start attracting people also naturally as well, but you do have to be somewhat level of attractive. But essentially, I was going to this meeting and I was wearing this band t-shirt, and before you know it, she started commenting, oh, you went to that concert or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I went to that concert. And she just started a conversation. Before you know it, we started talking for like 5-10 minutes. And then after the whole meeting was over, I was going to my car in the parking lot, and then she just started talking to me in the parking lot, which I found really strange. I think, like I said, I was maybe around 10 days. Maybe it was a little bit more. But essentially, guys, when you start noticing these attraction videos, or you start watching them, realize they don't happen all right away. These stories that I talk about, it's between 2020 and 2023. Of course, there's probably been a couple more stories, but it's just little things that happen out of the blue. The other thing I want you guys to be aware of is your environment. Are you in social settings? Because, like, if you're not experiencing the attraction part, it's probably because your level of attractiveness, your location, and then your social settings. Because if you're just at home and you're not putting yourself out there, of course you're not going to notice it. If you're not good looking, you probably won't notice it as much as other people. If you were more attractive on the attractiveness scale, you'll probably get a whole lot more attention just naturally. And then if you do retention or NF, it gives you that little slight edge, which makes you even more attractive than the vast majority of people, just because they do not practice it. The other thing is, realize that these attraction stories happen maybe once a month, or once every 3 months, once every 6 months. It's completely random, and it's something not to be looking forward. It happens when it happens. But anyways, guys, I think those are the vast majority of the stories that I cover throughout this channel. So don't forget smashing me that like button, and I'll go ahead and catch you guys on the next video.